Yeah, good morning, everyone, for this event, European Contexts, discussion format that Presseclub Concordia, Erste Foundation, and the Forum Journalism and Media in Vienna do since quite a while. My name is Maribel Königer. I'm from Erste Foundation and happy to welcome you to this discussion. We are here in person in the Presseclub Concordia, but there is also actually a crowd in Zoom event, and so I also address myself to the people watching us and listening to us, and maybe then afterwards through the chat discussing with us. The host is Mirjana Tomic. She's organizing format European Context since several years now, and I'm very happy to hand over now immediately to her because we want to use the time as best as possible, and Mirjana will of course introduce all our guests who are here for this very important topic. Thank you very much, and join me with the discussion.
Thank you very much, Maribel. Good morning, everyone here in Concordia and online. My name is Mirjana Tomic. I curate and moderate European context seminars and talks, all of them that focus on politics and media in Europe, and all of them have one thing in common, that is always try to understand the local context, and always the speakers come from the countries they talk about, because in my opinion, perceptions are very often more important than facts, and only when you are on the spot, you can understand the perceptions. Today's topic is Poland's presidential elections, transition, migration, war, security. And we have three wonderful speakers. Wojciech Szatzki, he is the head of political desk and Political Insight. It is sort of a think tank, consulting firm, media all together. Then Bartosz Wieliński, to my right, Deputy Editor-Chief on Gazeta Wyborcza. And the third speaker, this will be the second panel that will be moderated by the security expert from Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Simon Weiss. His name is Marek Świerczyński. He is the head of security desk in Politica Insight. Just a very brief introduction. The coming presidential elections in Poland, scheduled for 18th May, are an excellent occasion to analyze several topics. Major issues at stake for Polish voters and candidates, transition process from law and justice government to coalition government of Donald Tusk. I just would like to say why I chose this topic as well. Because now in the time of populisms, we think that once the people or the governments that we don't agree with are out of power, everything goes back to what it was before. Some of the analysts in the US say the US will not be the same after Donald Trump. So I think this is a very important topic. Then, so in that respect, I'm very interested in what has changed in Poland and what has remained the same. Then I'm interested, this is for the second panel, the process of militarization and the training of the civilian population. Over 100,000 civilians should be trained by 2027. I'm also interested when there are so many weapons, does it also mean that killing of women increases or not? And I'm interested in the process of the perception of and the cost of militarization, and as well the role of the church and religion in public life and education. These topics are very important in my opinion because Poland aspires to have a very big role in Europe, especially around security. First panel is two speakers. And I shall introduce him. This Wojciech Szatzki, as I said, is head of political desk at Politica Insight from 2002 to 2012. He was a journalist at Gazeta Wyborcza, where he covered party politics and opinion polls. He also has a podcast, and writes for Politica Weekly. Bartosz Wieliński is a journalist and a book author. He is editor He's deputy editor of Gazeta Wyborcza. He was a correspondent in Berlin. In 2017, he became Wyborcza's foreign editor. He received several international and national prizes. I would like to mention awards. I would like to mention two. In 2014, he won a Grand Press Award for Best Reportage. He was awarded for a story about orphans in post-war Austria who were abused by their guardians. And in 2018, he won, as part of a group, Concordia Prize, because Presse Club Concordia has Journalist Prize, for taking part in the investigation on Europe's far right. So, welcome back to Presse Club Concordia. Let me start. I think I will ask both of you the same questions, and probably more you, Bartosz, more about media. In October 2023, Pavel Zerka, senior policy fellow at European Council of Foreign Relations, wrote, after we knew the results of the elections, within the next 2 months, there should be able to form a new coalition government. This will end the 8-year role of Jarosław Kaczynski, his Law and Justice Party, which over the time adopted an increasingly illiberal, nationalist, Eurosceptic, and populist course. Just let us remind ourselves, 74% turnout at this election was higher than any other since '89. What would you say? I would like to start with you, Wojciech. What has changed? What has remained the same? What could the coalition government do? What they couldn't do?
Okay, so first of all, let me thank you for having me here. It's always a great pleasure to be here in Vienna, one of my favorite cities in the world. And moving to your question, well, a lot has changed, especially in the media department. I mean, what happened in the public media sector during the peace times was unprecedented. I mean, the public television always lent towards the ruling party, towards the ruling coalition. No matter whether it was PO times or SLD time, the left times back in the past, but what happened during the peace times had never happened before. So it was one of the first and most important priorities to change the situation in public media once Donald Tusk came to power. This happened at the very beginning of this government in December, and they changed the authorities of the public television right away. I mean, it took them a day or so to do so. They just switched off the TVP Info for a while. They had the force. They removed the people who were in the television, and they came up with new people who took over. And it was bending the law because, in theory, there was a law that was created by peace to safeguard the current state of affairs for long, because they created a body that was supposed to control the public media until 2027 or something like this. And this body consisted of peace politicians who were capable of changing the members of the boards of the public media. This was clearly violating the constitution, but they didn't care about it, and they also changed the constitutional tribunal so that they had the full control over the tribunal. So the new government decided to act fast, and all of a sudden a lot has changed in the public media. I mean, it is still leaning towards the government party, but it's just a little bit biased television and not a propaganda outlet, which was the case in peace times.
What else has changed in the society?
Well, we are still in the middle.
Or the legacy remains?
Well, we are still in the middle of the process. I mean, it looks like, and for many people, not just for me, we can show it in the polls, that a lot hasn't been changed yet.
In which area there was the least amount of changes?
Well, the judiciary, for example, pretty nothing happened because of Andrzej Duda and his power of veto. I mean, he would veto any law that would get on, I don't know, Supreme Court, Constitutional Tribunal. So we are still waiting for this government to start to govern, and this makes more and more people disappointed with the government.
So it has 2 more years to govern.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I'm sorry?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Well, the time is till 2027.
Would you like to continue? What has changed and what has remained the same, in your opinion?
Well, the approach of the government to the society changed, because the government isn't fighting with the people who they don't accept or who protest against that. The secret services are not being used to investigate, to invigilate, to crush from inside the opposition. Let me remind you that among countries that use the Pegasus software, this famous or infamous Israeli system, aimed to get all the information from portable phones, even that decrypted one, that was meant to be used against the most dangerous terrorists. It has been used in, well, in Morocco, in Mexico, in some countries of Asia, and in Poland and Hungary against members of the opposition. And we have the cases that probably the election in 2019 has been somehow rigged, because the chief of the campaign of the opposition was being wired up by the Pegasus. So the peace politicians, they knew everything opposition was planning for the elections. Well, we are thinking at the moment then in 2019, why is the opposition so, well, important? Why can't they do anything? Why is the peace still ahead, few steps or few meters ahead of the opposition? Well, because they had the Pegasus that they could get in the portable phones. They could listen to all conversations or even see them by using the camera. So that was the answer. This is over now. Was also over the police brutality against, well, people in general. The special privileges for the Peace Party members. The Peace Party was simply considering the country as their own, possession, and they were just taking, millions of it, dividing the money among their friends, cronies, family members, and so on. And the impunity was total. Now this is also over, and there is no hatred. Actually, the government and its agencies, they stopped inciting the hatred. If you could compare the press conferences of peace politicians and today's press conference of the regular government's official, then they were using, the words which were loaded with hate, which aimed to divide people, which aimed to antagonize people. It doesn't work that way now. So
Has this divide remained?
a divide still is very, very deep, and very afraid that this verbal aggression, which we observe now, could go further and could turn into physical aggression. We had a very serious and blatant case, which can't be forgotten. The mayor of Gdańsk, Paweł Adamowicz, was murdered, was stabbed to death at the stage in 2019, because in public television there was a, hate campaign against him that lasted for many, many months. PiS wanted to win the elections, local elections in the city of Gdańsk. They wanted to get their mayor of city of Gdańsk, because Gdańsk is very important in Polish history. The Solidarność was born here. And PiS aimed to rewrite the history of Poland, saying that not Lech Wałęsa was the most important figure in Solidarność, but Lech Kaczyński, so brother of Jarosław Kaczyński. And they wanted to have a control over the city and over its history. So they intended to move out this Paweł Adamowicz. They faked alleged criminal affair there. They created a false accusation against Adamowicz. They sent journalists from the public television to simply hound him, to start never-ending hate campaign against him. And finally, a convict who was released from the prison, where he probably watched a lot of these seances of hate, get on the stage during a charity ceremony and stab him to death. That's how it ends. So the words could kill, and if I observe this violence.
Where is this hate now? I would like to move on to say, where is this hate now, and is this hate a legacy, or it is overcome in the population?
No, it is like a decay. It's like if you have fallout, radioactive fallout, it needs, many, many years that these radioactive elements stop being lethal. And the same is with health. When you are infected with that, you need a long time to recover from that. And I must say that the best thing you did in Austria was to never allow people like Peace Party or like Orban Party to govern. Because after such a government, the recovery process would be long, and your society, which is now polarized and which is struggling also with serious problems, would be in far, far worse shape than this is now. So populists in the power, this is a curse. This is like Chernobyl, radiation accident that can't be cleaned within a few months. And I believe that Wojtek would agree with me that the process of healing of our country will also take many, many years.
I would like to ask now, Wojciech or the Wojtek?
Both.
Both. Okay. Then Wojtek, I didn't see this T in your, that's why I didn't know how to pronounce it. I would like to, it's part of this legacy, the fact that now the discussion that precedes the presidential election is basically the discussion among the right. There is really very little room for any liberal ideas. Do I understand this correctly?
Well, yes. I mean, the whole public discussion in Poland has steered toward the right. And
does this right have any limit, by the way?
Yeah, of course there are limits. I mean, not everybody is like Grzegorz Braun from the ultra far-right Confederacja of Confederation of Polish Crown, the name of the party is. So there are, of course, limits. And of course, for example, Rafał Trzaskowski is just borrowing some rhetorics from the right-wing parties. But what has changed is that topics that are traditionally associated to the left do not resonate well in the general public.
Just give us a few ideas, which topics?
Women's rights, for instance, civil partnerships, LGBT, and on the other hand, topics that are traditionally associated with the right are on the rise. I mean, protection of the border, attitude towards the immigrants, militarization, which we will discuss with Marek later on, spending money on weapons, and so on and so on. So basically, Rafał Trzaskowski, although he's a clear favorite of the presidential race, is like playing an away game. He was traditionally a left-wing politician, representative of the left side of the Civic platform, and right now he had to move to the right. One of the first signs was that he was the first one to propose to cut social benefits for the Ukrainian people living in Poland. So this shows that he needed to move to the right so that he could basically win the elections. Also, the left-wing candidates, Adrian Zandberg, Magdalena Biejat, Joanna Senyszyn, all together have like 7%, perhaps 8% of the vote in the polls, so not very much.
I have a question just about migration. How can such a Catholic country that believes in charity and mercy be so ruthless to migrants on the border?
Well, first of all, this is
And I understand that some NGOs that help the migrants are in jail. Some.
no.
that is
some
a
of them are facing trial, I suppose.
Okay.
But they haven't been sentenced. So, well, immigration, and of course there are different types of immigration, and
I mean
the
the
hybrid war,
non-Ukrainian migration.
non-Ukrainian migration. So this is one of the fields in which Tusk continues, to some extent at least, Jarosław Kaczyński's policy. I mean, when the Civic coalition was in opposition, great number of members of the Civic platform were trying to help the migrants from on the Belarusian border. They were trying to give them food, give them legal help, and so on and so on. And they were, well, the public media and peace politicians were coming after them and attacking them. And once Donald Tusk came to power, he took a very tough stance on the protection of the border. He declined the right to asylum for the immigrants, and it was for many reasons. It was done for many reasons. I mean, we are facing a hybrid war on the border. That's one reason, and secondly, Donald, if he hadn't done it, he would be attacked by the Law and Justice Party for not protecting our border. So basically, he didn't have much space, and also the whole protection of the border thing plays well in the society. So we are building fortification on the border. We are cutting trees to, so that the immigrants cannot hide in the woods, and so on and so on.
You wanted to comment, but
yeah, but they're not cutting trees for the migrants. They're cutting trees to build to make a view, to observe the border, and to be able to act if Russians attacked. So this is a military transformation, not anti-migrant transformation. But Wojtek is absolutely right. But Donald Tusk was never, open for discussion on liberalization of migration to Europe. And I remember him from 2015. So you remember that well. Austria was affected by the migratory crisis. And he was then the president of the European Council, and he opposed to that what Angela Merkel did. And it seems that he had a better sense of understanding what people think than Angela Merkel, because he believed that when people will have the feeling that the borders of the country doesn't have any meaning anymore, that you could just go forward and move from Hungary to Austria, from Serbia to Hungary, from Hungary to Austria, from Austria to Germany, whenever you want and how you want, that the internal feeling, internal perception of security would drop to zero. And that is destructive for the state, and that opens, the box of Pandora with all nationalist, fascist, and so on. And I had an interview with Tusk, what was that, in October. And he said whether he and whether liberals and Democrats will solve the migratory problems to Europe, or the fascists will come and then populists. They will have no solution for that. They will spoil more than they'll repair. But the cost of that action would be terrible. So he was never a fan. And you ask how could it happen in a Catholic country like Poland, that the migrants are not welcomed. But I believe that in every Christian country in Europe, including Austria, they're not very welcome. And migration, if we talk about migration, we must divide the question of refugees, of people who flee from the persecution, and they must be helped. Of course, there's no doubt about that. But there are, millions of economical migrants, people who just want to move to Europe to have a better life because they could think they could live better than in, countries of Africa or countries of Asia, and they will bend the law, they will break the law, lie,
Yeah, I know we had
you know
a
this
lot
problem. You know this
yeah,
problem.
of course. We have had events about that. We discussed it quite a bit.
And you need simply to regulate it. You need to manage the migration. We need migrants. This whole visa affair, which we used to have at the end of the peace government, the peace allowed 300,000 or almost 400,000 people from Asia and Africa to move to Poland without any verification, without checking if they are really a specialist that we need. Now, there was a false way. You need to check people who you let in. There is no human right to move to Europe whenever you want, and with the whole family or with the whole town. We won't support that. We now see that quite clearly that we can't support migration that has no restrictions. So we need to change the approach, and we are in the middle of doing that. And it has its consequences. There's bound with human tragedies. But this is necessary.
Okay, let me move to a couple more questions, and we shall open, of course, there will be time for the audience to ask live and online. My colleague, Ivan Vejvoda, will be moderating the chat online. Well, my next question is, could you, in general terms, describe the different campaigns or the narratives of the main presidential candidates? Then I'm sure journalists will ask more details. Where do they differ? In which aspects they're the same?
Well, there are two main candidates who are bound to make it to the second round. This is Mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Trzaskowski, the deputy head of the Civic platform. And he hasn't come with an electoral agenda yet, and perhaps he will not do it. So
But the elections are in 10 days.
yeah, but he feels that he doesn't need a detailed program.
This is not Germany. Let's make it
clear. So we can just. I just can say a few words about what he's proposing and what language he's using and what rhetorics he's using. So basically, what he promises is that he, as the president, will cooperate with the government, will cooperate especially in the field of national security and European affairs and foreign affairs. But also he will encourage the government to act faster, to deliver what they had promised in the parliamentary campaign in 2023. So he says that he will be the completion of this.
Just a follow-up question, because I know you are also an expert in polls. Does this type of attitude really encourage people to go out and vote?
Yeah, because Rafał Trzaskowski is not just a politician, but also a figure and a symbol. So people, at least 1/3 of Polish population that is interested in supporting Trzaskowski in the first round, are longing for someone like this. He's a very experienced politician, one of the most popular politicians in Poland, first or second in the polls that track the trust in politicians. He's been there, he's done that. He was in the presidential race in 2020. So basically, he doesn't need to specify what he wants to do, because people have already got to know him. Of course, he says a lot about buying Polish goods, or that he is in favor of common sense in the politics. He is talking about rebuilding the common good in Poland, but basically, much of this is just rhetorics. And I can understand this approach, because also the president has in fact, doesn't have much to say, especially if he's from the same political camp. I mean, the main prerogative, the main power of the president is the power to veto.
So he has the power. If it's a cohabitation, then there is power. If there is
Then-
no cohabitation, then
And so that's what right now I can move to Nawrocki,
yes.
who, on the other hand, has a lot of ideas. Most of them are crazy. I mean, the president has nothing to do with the things Nawrocki promises, like lowering the prices of energy in Poland. There is no way the president could do it. But he just promised, and he made this promise several times, that people will pay 33% less for energy if he is elected as president. So he has a lot of ideas, but his general idea is that if he wins, he will end the rule of this government. So on the agenda level, there are a lot of things he offers loosely connected to the office of the president, but on the general, in the general picture, he just wants to put this government to the grave.
I read that education, Catholic or religious education in schools is also an issue.
No, I don't think so. I mean, perhaps for the left-wing candidates, yes, it is an issue, but for the general public, it's health, it's security, it's immigration. These are the most important topics.
Bartosz, when it comes to migration, there is a unanimity. When it comes to security, I understand also there is a unanimity. So what do we have left? Women's rights, health?
No. This is not that easy. This is not that easy.
Go ahead.
You could say they want to. They are strict on migration, but it's the problem how to rule with that. You know, so the Peace Party, they were very strict on migration, and they were able simply to torture migrants. There was a case. A group of migrants from Afghanistan was stranded on the border on the Belarusian side. They didn't want them to go to Poland. They didn't want to provide, any health, any food, any water, nothing. They were just surrounded by the soldiers, and we're just waiting there for something. There were a lot of cameras, and they wanted to show the country how tough they are on immigration, that they are just torturing a group of migrants, sitting on the meadow on the border with Belarus, and there were cameras everywhere, live broadcast. Was like this.
Like reality show
yeah,
on
like
the
reality
border.
show, look how tough we are. On the same time, thousands of migrants were coming legally to Poland with a visa they shouldn't have gotten in the first place because they didn't meet the criteria. So there's a question of efficacy and the PR. The peace government they were masters of the PR. They could turn, everything into a PR story, positive for them or negative for the opponents. They were really, really good. The current government, in terms of strategic communication, is nowhere. This is the weakest point of this government is the communication. But the predecessors were the masters of that. In terms of security, Marek will probably be more elaborative on that. But the idea of peace was to create a self-sufficient army, which is huge and has, thousands of different weaponry, and the modern weaponry they are just buying without bargaining, fighters, launchers, tanks, and so on. And the idea of Tusk is to be strong within the alliance. So have allies cooperate, share the responsibility, and get the money from the EU. So he wanted that the EU pays for those fortifications that are being built on the eastern border, and that starts. He's successful in that. So the idea is, should Poland be a fortress, not connected to the allies, in constant confrontation with the allies? there was a time we had very good relations with Belarus, with Lukashenko. The deputy prime minister was traveling to Minsk to meet Lukashenko, and foreign minister. And we had a very bad relations with Germany. And even with the Czech Republic, we had a hard time, which is our closest neighbor. And the Tusk idea is to work together, to be a leader in Europe, to be, well, among friends, power through unity. So this is the fundamentals. Are you European or are you anti-European? Kaczynski was anti-European, and under Kaczynski's rule, Poland was drifting away. And there are some politicians in the piece, there are not many, but they're quite loud, saying that 2027, when Poland will reach this threshold of being a rich country that has to pay more for the poor country in the Union than to get the money from the EU budget, we should vote in the referendum if we shouldn't exit the European community. So if they didn't lose the election, if hadn't they lost the elections 2 years ago, it would be probable that this drifting away of the union would accelerate, and we would be in quite a different situation. And Tusk is European, and he wants to keep Poland in the EU. The problem, that is, well, bad-looking thing. We have the presidency of the EU, and this presidency is in the shadow of the election and the campaign. And they really didn't do much. They could have, I believe they could have done more and better during the presidency, but this political implication causes that they haven't done, which is bad.
Well, this brings me to the question of Poland and Ukraine. Not so much the support for Ukraine in terms of the war and the defense of Ukraine against Russia, more like towards the refugees or migrants, and also Polish agriculture and Ukraine, because when Poland becomes rich and if Ukraine joins the European Union, then lots of money will be going to Ukraine. Is this a topic for discussion?
Well, not now, but that was a topic because, well, in 2023, a lot of Ukrainian grain that was to be transited out of the country through Polish ports landed up in Poland. Market totally collapsed because the Ukrainian grain was cheaper than the Polish one, and the agricultures rebelled then. Because it was due to failure of this government to control the flow of grain through Poland. That could have been done in a better way, but they have neglected us, as usual. They have neglected doing that. But of course, in the negotiation with the EU, the access of Ukrainian agricultures to European common markets will be put, on hold for many, many years. That will be a problem that need to be resolved, and it will be a hard issue, for sure. But this is nothing new, nothing special in the Union. Well, I'd like to remind you that Polish workers, they had to wait 8 years till Austrian, German labor markets were open for workers from Poland, because you needed the time to adapt. And nothing bad had happened. After enlargement and after these 8 periods, your labor market didn't collapse when Poles could legally start working here in Austria, and I believe that also could be solved. And agriculture from Ukraine, this is a challenge not only for Poland, it's a challenge for France, it's a challenge for Spain and for Austria, and there will be many issues that could be a challenge. But there are things and there are ways to work this out. I think I'm convinced that Ukrainians won't be, that easy partners during that negotiation. We see that there are frictions. They have their own interests. We have our interests. But as I said, this is nothing new in our community. There are common goals. They must be somehow reached. We'll fight with each other for sure. There will be a bad time. Some bad times, and there is a resolve to overcome this. But the problem is when populist politicians would try to instrumentalize that. As in France or in Germany, there was a campaign against Polish hand workers, some plombier polonais.
Plumbers.
Plumbers, yeah, Polish plumbers. The same probably will happen in Poland against Ukrainians, and we also require politicians to find an answer for that.
Thank you. Well, whoever has questions, please just introduce yourself. Go ahead.
It's me. Thank you very much. My name is Brigitte Holzner. I'm a member of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, the oldest women's and peace organization in the world, founded in 1915. But my question is maybe a follow-up to what has just been discussed, the Poland-Ukraine relationships. Dealing with the past is often an issue for populist parties. And I want to refer to the Volhynia, if I pronounce it correctly, massacre in 1943, where 50,000 or up to 100,000 or even more Poles were massacred, were murdered by the Ukrainian insurgent army, I think it was called, and Polish population. And so there are many mass graves in this
What's the
area.
question?
And my question is this massacre of the past an issue in the elections? And if yes, by whom?
Thank you.
Yes, this is one of the topics of the election. I mean, not perhaps in the top 5, but this issue is raised by both Konfederacja candidate, Sławomir Mencen, and Karol Nawrocki, the candidate of peace, and Grzegorz Braun, of course, who's the most anti-Ukrainian candidate of all of them. So they are using this topic. For example, Karol Nawrocki said that Ukraine shouldn't join the NATO and the European Union until it resolves the problem with the Volhynian massacre. And it's basically about exhumation, which is now taking place, by the way. And also the government is aware that this is a sensitive issue for lots of Poles. I mean, you may not know the context, but for at least hundreds of thousands of people in Poland, this is also a family story. I mean, I remember reading memoirs and people who were fleeing from Wołyń to German-occupied Poland. They were telling stories that were far more terrifying than the stories that people in Warsaw knew, and so on and so on. So this is something that is still somewhere in our heads, at least for the older parts of the society. And it looks like the Ukrainian government has come to an agreement with the Polish government, and the exhumation works started for good.
Well, the problem is that those units, those organizations, those partisans in the Ukraine that were massacring Polish people were also fighting the Soviets. And they are somehow national heroes for the Ukraine because they are fighting for sovereign and independent Ukraine. And it's hard to acknowledge for Ukrainians. I understand this problem. They have heroes that have a lot of blood stained on their clothes and on their hands. And each country would like to have a glorious past. And look at Baltic countries. They have their story of collaboration, and they have the story of Holocaust. Look at Holland, look at the France, collaboration in France and Belgium and Western countries. Well, look at Germany and Austria. Well, everybody has, there's no innocent victim, no country that could be named innocent victim of this tragedy. The problem is we still struggle to find a ground for discussion on that, and discussion should be made among historians, among people who know the details, who know the context. We can't say that Volhynian massacre happened suddenly without any reasons, and that was nothing before. There was problem of Polish colonization of Ukraine during the Second Republic. It was an issue. Of course, there is no explanation, no justification of the crime against humanity that has been committed there, but we need to talk about this that in context, and this is not a task for politicians. Even journalists sometimes are simply too stupid to dwell into that complicated matter. And what we need is to, working together with Ukrainians on that, try to look for, Poles and Germans, they work very well in terms of researching German crimes in Poland. There are German researchers who really spend, a lot of time digging in the past and the crimes of their grandfathers. Maybe afterward there will be a proper time to discuss it. But that's the issue which is now conclusive for me. This is not a good time to deal with that when the Ukraine is struggling for its survival. And if Ukraine fails, Poland and Baltic countries and Eastern Europe will be next. So this discussion should be postponed for after the war.
Thank you. Gerald, and then we shall have the, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Gerald Schubert from the Austrian daily Der Standard. Wojciech Szatzki, you said in the beginning that the new government had to kind of breach or bend the constitution in order to be able to govern it all because of the heritage the PiS party left after their government. And there was this fear in Polish public, I think, and even within the new government, that they will have a problem with that because they will have to do that, but at the same time they open a narrative that the PiS party would say, you said you are not like us and now you do exactly the same thing. So is this something which is now emphasized by the PiS party in the Polish pre-election campaign, or is it too technical to provide enough emotion for the campaign for the party?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a second. Let's take the second question and then move. Ivan, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's a question from Karol Luczka, Eastern European advocacy lead at the IPI, International Press Institute. The question is, while the situation is undoubtedly better now than under the PiS government on essentially all fronts, can the blame for those times really be placed unilaterally on PiS and their political environment? Isn't polarization and a generally high level of violence/aggression in the public debate a problem on both sides of the political spectrum? What can be done to remediate this?
Thank you. I guess the first question, you, and then the second question, you, Bartosz.
Okay. As the first question was, please. Yeah, so of course, PiS is using this constitutional rhetoric to justify both its actions and to go after the government. So first of all, they are saying that they are unlawfully robbed of money they should get. Each party that made it to the parliament gets money from the budget, and it's millions of euros, and PiS doesn't get it because they were punished for using public resources in the parliamentary campaign in 2023. And to some extent, and there is a real dispute in the legal world among the lawyers whether it's right for the government to decide that they do not pay any money to PiS. My take is that PiS should get this money. They should get not as much money as they, in theory, should get, because they were using the state resources in the campaign, but it wasn't proven. They didn't. I mean, the Electoral Commission didn't show enough proof of that. And also, all political parties that are stripped of this money should have the right to appeal. And in fact, PiS didn't have the right to appeal because the government doesn't recognize the Supreme Court, this chamber of Supreme Court that rules on the appellation of political parties. So PiS right now, partly for their because of their own mistakes and misconduct, and partly because government wants so, doesn't get any money. And this might be one of the arguments, one of the topics after the election, whether the election process was fair. But there are more examples of this in peace rhetorics. They are accusing the government of using special services for attacking, for example, the candidate, but they haven't shown any proof of that. They are accusing the public television for being too pro-government, which to some extent is true, I believe. And there are many more examples of this. I mean, right now, both the president, Andrzej Duda, and the peace politicians are the greatest defenders of the constitutions, which is quite ironic.
Joke, yeah.
Bartosz, would you like to take the second question?
Well, I'd like to ask to add something to this law breaching stuff. Well, sometimes you can make, well, generally you can't make omelette without breaking the eggs. There's a French proverb. So that's such story, and the law hasn't been broken. The decisions regarding the public television has been confirmed by the courts. So that's a sign that it was legal, but of course it was very tricky, and we could just wish that it has been done in other way. But you know, the other problem is that peace before they were just like Orban felt that he's losing slightly power, and he could lose the elections in 2020. It was 23, yeah. So he started to transform the system in order to keep control of key institutions, even if case that he loses the government. And he started to make amends to the law. And the same was made by the Peace Party. And by the Peace Party in 2023 or even before that. And the control over the public television should be maintained by the Peace Party, even if they lost the election. The same was with the prosecution. They changed the law of the prosecution. They wanted to have their men in charge of the entire prosecution offices, prosecution machine in Poland. So all the prosecution offices will be subordinated to the peace person. The same was to the diplomacy. They wanted that the president would be in charge of the strategy of Polish foreign policy. And these were the changes made in the very last moment, and in order to run the country in an efficient way. The first thing was to shut down those propaganda broadcasts, like was TVP. It was really unbearable to have a hate speech every day. And no matter it would take, it was necessary for the common good. I believe it was so. The second thing was to get rid of this man in the prosecution office. And also there was a legal trick found, that the man was accepted to the service, the prosecution service, in improper way, and that's how they get rid of him. But it was not very nice. It was tricky, effective, but it wasn't very nice, of course. But well, as Bismarck said, people shouldn't see how the sausage is being produced and how the policy is being made. So maybe
if I may add on that, basically what happened in Poland in the under peace was transforming the country from the rule of law state to political will state. And this political will was everything.
The will of the party.
Jarosław Kaczyński created the whole system of quasi-legal institutions that were clearly violating the constitution, so that he could control, together with his closest associates, the country. And this decoration stayed with us because the new coalition doesn't have the power to change the laws because of the possible veto of the President Duda. So we have all the decorations left inherited from peace times, and they have to somehow find a way to navigate through this. And this is hard, and sometimes, as Bartosz said, this is ugly. And some lawyers say also, not necessarily connected with peace, that also the new government breaks some laws.
Would you like to answer the second question? Then we have three questions here.
Okay, so the polarization. Polarization is a natural state of Polish politics. Since I remember, and we are the same jahrgang, so the same year we were born in generation 78. This is our fourth pope now, who has been elected, and we fifth.
John Paul II, the first. I was
okay. So well, I was born after his election. Okay, it's my fourth one. So we remember that from the communists. It was always we and they. We, I mean, the opposition to communism and the communists. When the Iron Wall fell down and Poland transformed to democracy, there were the post-communists and people from the Solidarność in the government. There was a division. Then suddenly something switched, and it changed that to the peace and the opponents of peace. And it was always like that. And I believe in the Second Republic, there was also very deep polarization between people who supported Piłsudski and who disdained Piłsudski. This is the way Poland works. And of course, this is not a peaceful way of dealing stuff. And some of our colleagues miss from Czechian way of doing politics and Czechian way of life, which is calm and peaceful and future Czech way. So peaceful, calm, without many worries. But this is Poland, of course, and we didn't start that. We didn't incite people. People from our democratic, pro-European, pro-Western allegiance. We didn't incite hate. We never called that supporters of Kaczynski are the worst people, or they are supporters of they are traitors, or they are Gestapo agents. We didn't call them thieves and traitors.
we did.
No.
Thieves? Of course.
Okay, but not thieves and traitors.
Please go ahead with glasses. Yes, and then, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Hi, I'm here in multiple hats. I'm a researcher at the CU. I'm doing a PhD, but I'm also working with Balkan Insight. Just wanted to ask about economic issues. What's your input on that? Obviously, the president in Poland has generally very limited economic power, but that obviously doesn't mean people don't vote on economic issues. And specifically, I wanted to ask what's your take on the fact that PiS government, to some limited degree, had fairly sort of left-wing, statist, social policy, welfare, big state investment, that kind of stuff. And the current government often leans more towards sort of Muskish, Dojish, deregulation, liberalization, that kind of stuff. Obviously, a lot of that is more communication and policy, but then again, that doesn't mean people vote on, don't vote on communication. So what's your take on the importance of those issues and how that ties into the tripartite right-wing race between PiS, Trzaskowski, and Mencen from Konfederacja?
Thank you so much. Would you also like to ask, and then we'll take both questions? So.
I have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Please remember.
Yes, I'm Marta Georgiev, Austrian Broadcasting Company. You already spoke about the people's disappointment with government's work. For example, abortion. They promised to loosen strict abortion law within 100 days in office. It didn't happen, not only because Duda's veto, but also because the government itself is very divided in this question. And I wanted to ask you, how big is the abortion topic at the moment? Is it still that big? And the second question, can Nawrocki profit from this disappointment in general? How big are his chances to win?
Thank you. Who will start?
I can say something about the economy.
Economy, and then disappointment, abortion, and Nawrocki, if he is.
Does this put it, maybe?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure Dominic knows much more about economics than we do. So,
okay, so in terms of economy, well, that was the reason the PiS won the election and kept afloat for a long, long time, because they broke with a Polish traditional perception of liberal economy. In liberal economy, there's nothing for free, no lunch is for free. You need to earn your money, to spend your money, and you can't spend more than you have in the pocket. These are, the rules. And they said that the state should give money to the people, which didn't happen didn't happen since 1989. Since 1989,
Otherwise, no welfare state. Or there is welfare state.
there was no welfare state till PiS appeared, and PiS started to build a crippled way of welfare state, paying the money for having children. And there was a huge, lack of imagination among the liberals, among the Platforma, that they didn't invent it. That idea that they should give a few hundred zloty to people with children, to the families with children, that could, have such boost in the polls, such a boost in the support. Never happened before. So since 1989 in Poland, the only policy was austerity, was making efforts, was saving money, giving your best to achieve your future. So going, through ashes in order to achieve something better in the future. So we've been to the EU. Millions of Poles had to emigrate to Britain or to Germany to get a decent life there. That was frustrating. They had, the crisis in 2010, 2012, there was a really hard time on the labor market, especially for the young people who couldn't find a fixed job. They have to get these temporary job contracts, didn't get much money and didn't get the stabilization, which is needed to start a life, to grant a family, to establish family, to have children. Buying a flat it is still, of course, out of the range. So there was a huge frustration among this generation. And when PiS come with this proposal, with this offer, we give you 500 zloty, so 125 euro, just for having a child. It was a game changer. It was a real game changer. And that should have been invented before them. Because this is no rocket science in that. In Germany, you get the money. In Austria, you get the money for having a children. Having a children that costs a lot. We both are parents. We know that perfectly. And then what happened next was disastrous, because as every other authoritarian, Kaczynski was looking to build a monument within his life. And they decided to dig through, I don't know, the English name for that. There's a small peninsula in northern Poland, and there's a city of Elbląg, which is a port, but the only seaway to city of Elbląg, because of this peninsula, goes through Russian Kaliningrad Oblast. And the road is now blocked because the Russians, they don't allow Polish ships to go there. So there was an idea to dig through this peninsula to create another sea route to the city of Elbląg. The PiS decided to dig it. They paid 2 billion zloty to make a seaway through this peninsula, which was ecologically disastrous. It didn't have any sense in terms of economy, because the city of Elbląg is a very, very small port and there is no trade going through them. And of course, it has no military importance for Poland. But this is the only huge investment they have planned and did, and then sold as a huge propaganda investment. And the other program for them was to build a huge airport in the middle of Poland, close between Łódź and Warszawa, a central communication port, which is quite similar in idea to the airport Erdogan has built in Istanbul. Something really modern and really big in terms of volume, in terms of investment. The problem is we are not quite sure if Poland needs such a big airport, if that would be affordable. But the pressure, so Poles want to be proud of their nation, of course, and the propaganda was effective. So now the pressure on current government is very, very high, and they simply can't renounce that. So new government said that they will continue preparing this huge investigation. But the truth is that Poland spends too much, that the numbers are bad, and that we are on the good path to end up someday, like in Greece, with the debt below the limits. And future and later, we will have to start saving money. I don't really believe that what the Minister of Finance is saying, that we will be growing so fast that we'll have enough money in the pocket to borrow that much money and to spend, to pay off the debt. So sooner or later, we will have to cut the spending in Poland. That would be necessary, but this is not a good topic for the electoral campaign, of course.
Thank you. And the second question, we are over
Abortion.
time already, about the
I
government
try to
disappointed
be
in
brief
abortion.
on that. Anti-abortion law, yes, is one of the topics, but peace avoids this topic as much as they can because they know that this is one of the topics they are on the losing side. So, whereas Confederacja, for example, is very hard on this one, and Sławomir Mencen, who's fighting for like 15% of the right-wing voters, they are very elaborate on that, and they even want to push a new to make it even more anti-abortion. PiS is trying to avoid the topic. Whereas Rafał Trzaskowski has made it clear for many times that he's a pro-choice politician, and once he's in the presidential palace, this law will be changed, which is, I don't know if he can make this promise because, as you said, there are lots of divisions within the ruling coalition, and large parts of the PSL of one of the coalition parties is against, changing of the abortion law. And as for, you also had this general question on whether Nawrocki could win, basically, because of the government failing to deliver. I had a feeling until very recently that Nawrocki might win the elections because of the two facts, because of the debate shifting towards the right and because of the government failing to deliver. Nawrocki is a terrible candidate. My take is that he's the worst candidate I've seen for years. I mean, he's terrible at speeches, he's terrible at interviews. Still, and yeah, a shady figure. But even though I think he had a slim chance of winning this because the zeitgeist is working for him. But this changed in me because of the apartment scandal. He lied in the presidential debate. And then he lied many times, and peace politicians lied many times. And this last week has been a disaster for Nawrocki's campaign. So I think right now his chances of winning are close to zero. I'd say 10%, for example.
Close to zero.
No, 90% is, I think, a fair judgment. But all in all, if had peace chosen another candidate, I think they would have much better
Thank you.
chance of winning.
The last question, but really a quick one.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Grauenberg Institute of the Danube region, Central Europe. I'm asking still about Visegrad. It did not really materialize because of the different stance, of course, versus the aggression of Russia. On the other hand, during Kaczynski period and peace period, EU got attacked all the way through, and now there is a chance of sort of building up this Weimar triangle again, which was an old idea. Does it play any role in public and now in the presidential elections that Poland may have a stronger word within the European Union?
Thank you.
Yes, this is the narration of Trzaskowski, that Poland is the important player in the Europe. Poland is back, and this is not only Weimar Triangle, well, because the Visegrad is over. This is something which doesn't work, and this history is a new format. This is Nordic Baltic format. So Poland with Nordic countries, with Baltic countries together. So this is NB8 plus 1. This is the name of that. And this is a security format. This is this very belligerent nucleus of NATO countries that feel threatened directly by Russia, that will pay for rearming, and they're ready to fight with Russia. They train for that every day. So this is a new perspective. Poland became Nordic countries. So we are no longer Central Europe or Eastern Europe, but we are the
Scandinavian.
Or Scandinavia. That's
well, in terms of security, not in values.
No, well, we hope that will be also Scandinavian in values. Well, let me remind you that we had a Swedish king. Well, he was kicked off of Sweden after that, but he has a Swedish roots. And the interesting thing is that PiS is trying to undermine this pro-Europeanism of Trzaskowski. Firstly, speaking that we didn't achieve anything in Europe, and that Europe is against us. And of course, there's Germany and the EU as a German construct that would transform Poland into a German Bundesland. So that's, absurd narration on the EU. But well, you have in Poles that almost majority of Poles is very, very pro-European. But if you dig deeper and ask the question, should we pay for Moldova? Or should we accept refugees from Germany? Or should we do more?
Germany?
Yeah, because the Germans kicked out, those who had just refused to go. Or should we engage more? Should we pay more? Well, EU is great as a source of money. Taking money, no problem, but giving money away for others. So I expect there will be some transformation of our relations with the EU, but this is for the future, not for this.
Thank you so much, Wojciech. Thank you, Bartosz. And we have the Polish context, and let's see the impact of the new president, whoever it is, for the rest of Europe. And you have introduced already the security topic, which we shall have in 10 minutes. We are a bit late. Have a coffee, and in 10 minutes, we shall talk details about security. Thank you so much, and please an applause.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our second panel. I'm very pleased to welcome Marek Swerczynski to today's session. Marek is head of the Security International Affairs Desk at Balkan Insight, where he has been shaping the debate on Polish and defense policy in NATO-Poland relations since 2015. And he is one of the most experienced and respected security analysts in the region, and with a long career in journalism, including with the BBC World Service. His work focuses on military modernization, Polish-US defense cooperation, and the broader evolution of the European security order. Marek also regularly contributes to international think tank debates and academic forums across Europe and the United States. So we are honored to have you with us today, Marek, and we will proceed like in the last session. So we have a debate here on the panel. I have a few questions to you, and then we will open up the discussion. So Marek, let me begin. As I already warned you, I believe with the most fundamental question, especially today on the 9th of May, with the victory parade in Moscow. Do you believe that Polish-Russian relations can ever be repaired? So, and if so, what would need to be happen? How would the war in Ukraine have to end? And what else would need to be changed or need to be changed to make a reconciliation even imaginable? Because, and that's my last point to this question, because for almost 2 decades now, we kind of observed this move in only one direction. So since the beginning of the meat scandal, I think 2006, 2007. So, but Russia and Kaliningrad will not disappear. Yeah? And so the question remains: how do we kind of organize this relationship in the future. So you have the floor, Marek, please.
Right. Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mirjana and others. Thank you for being here and having me in such a beautiful place like Vienna. Yes, it was not our choice, the direction of events that you've described. We, like, good part of the 21st century, we, like the rest of the West, we tried to be in dialogue, at least, with Russia. In the beginning, I remember the Rome summit of NATO when the NATO-Russia Council was created. Everybody was speaking about, well, maybe even inviting Russia to NATO one day. But of course, since I think it was 2005 that Mr. Putin described the collapse of the Soviet Union as the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, I guess that was the point when Russia has decided to depart from this path of dialogue and cooperation. And then, of course, we had the 2007 Munich speech and everything else, which led us, sadly, to the situation where when we cannot describe Russia as a partner anymore, and we decided collectively to designate it as an opponent, for which we as Poland have advocated for many years earlier. We have been warning the rest of Europe and the NATO allies, including the United States, that Russia is moving towards a very dangerous location and implementing very dangerous mindset, because this is also important, that this is not only the actions, it is also an ideology of being at war, not only with Ukraine, but also with the collective West and the democratic neighbors, right? The countries who have, based on their sovereignty, they have chosen the path towards democracy, open markets, and open societies. To your question, I think this is of course, Russia will still exist as a neighbor, but you can easily imagine the situation from the Cold War, that there were neighboring blocs and neighboring countries divided by some kind of Iron Curtain. And what is happening, on the eastern border of Poland and also the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and in other places, it somewhat reminds the Cold War divide situation, where you have a military buildup in order to prevent any aggression from the eastern side. And of course, the border is also, to a degree, fortified and protected. And there is no signal that Moscow is even contemplating changing the approach to the West. So we have no reason to contemplate changing our approach.
Okay. So that brings me to the second question, and against this, as you described, this backdrop of confrontation, this deterrence-based security order with along this NATO-Russia contact zone. Let's talk about Poland's own security strategy and defense posture. So Warsaw is currently, as you know, investing heavily in modern weapon systems, buying especially from the US and South Korea, but also from domestic producers. But what is the strategic rationale behind the scale of this militarization? Because there's always this question, if you speak with military planners, always the question, how much is enough? Yeah, so how more militarization do you need? So when is the deterrence credible enough? So, and how does this national strategy align? And this is, from my point of view, a very interesting forward-looking question, how this national militarization and military build-up strategy align with the broader, now European, rearm wave of rearmament, what we see across Europe and in some national states?
Right. So in discussing military affairs, it's always good to have a map before you. We don't have a map, but everybody, but everybody, you know, can figure out the Eastern European region. That is maybe the stretching from Estonia, from the Gulf of Finland, down, you know, to the Polish-Belarusian border and southwards. And also covering the Baltic Sea itself. Poland, first of all, is exposed to the direct borderline with the Russian Federation, that is the exclave of the Kaliningrad Oblast. Secondly, you know, we have this Belarus problem. Belarus, for a long time, was a country close to neutrality in military terms, not very aggressive towards its neighbors. Today, it has transformed, again, sadly, and it was not our choice, into a proxy of Moscow, and it has been, you know, totally dominated in military terms by Russia, and it's probably even controlled, yes, by Russia in military dimension. And of course, we have we have a long border with Ukraine, who has been fighting very bravely for more than 3 years, and will probably, you know, hopefully, surely will remain a sovereign country. But of course, Russia is not done yet with Ukraine, and who knows what will happen later on. But that's number one. So that's one layer of the foundation of the Polish strategy, right? So we have actually come to terms with our location, with our geographic, you know, dimensions, and our reach out. So that's another layer, because Poland has transformed its military thinking from sort of strictly territorial defense into playing a role, a wider role, a broader, a you know, further-looking role, because again, looking at the map, it is clear that for the defense of the Baltic States Peninsula, which is basically, you know, facing the Baltic Sea on the one side and facing Russia and Belarus on the other side, Poland is a crucial country. I mean, without Poland, the defense of the Baltic states is you know, very difficult, if not impossible. So, you know, trying to figure out a new grand strategy, if there is anything like that in Poland, we decided that we need to invest not only in capabilities for the defense of our country, but for the capabilities of ranges of you know, military interoperability terms in capability dimension, which will be suitable for the defense of the Baltic states as well, and in capabilities to be able to stop the enemy beyond our borders and beyond the borders of our allied countries. So this is why we have decided to invest very, very heavily in long-range artillery system. That's missile or rocket artillery.
We have a map.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. It tells you actually everything. I mean, Poland is the key hub, both in terms of Western support to Ukraine, and also in any defense operation leading to the Baltic states. And of course, you are familiar with the term Suwalki Gap, yes?
Oh, everybody.
Or the Suwalki Corridor, which is the stretch between Belarus and the Kaliningrad Oblast. It's roughly 65 to 70 kilometers only. So it's a very, very thin, narrow corridor, and it's only one railway line and two roads, one good, one not so good, which leads from Poland to Lithuania. So this is really a hotspot, actually, or I would call it a center of gravity for responsibility to defend the entire concept of NATO operation in the Baltic Sea rim. Actually, if you're interested, it is next week that the Stettin, NATO multinational corps will actually exercise defense of this stretch between Estonia and the Suwałki Gap. It will be for an entire week, and this will actually demonstrate how to implement the new operational plans of NATO designed in the past 2 or 3 years. As you know, we have a new plan for the defense of Europe, and there are some geographical responsibilities, and this is why Poland has foreseen this responsibility in its armament, in its expansion strategy. So, ending the answer, it is totally related to NATO operational and defense planning that Poland takes this role of a sort of a larger than it is military power.
So this is interesting because let's hope that the military exercise will be successful.
They're always
always successful. Yeah, that's very interesting that military exercises are always successful.
No, but you only learn from your mistakes, yes?
Yes.
From your failures.
But we see right now in this war in Ukraine that Poland is already a hub, playing a role of a hub in Rzeszów. Especially, and I think the majority of the military support deliveries and all these things are going through Poland to Ukraine. So, but the interesting thing is when it comes to these weapon buys and all these militarization or defense buildup, that Poland is not donating much of these things to neighboring states. So
if this was a Polish audience, you would be booed already.
I know. But I'm here safe in Vienna. That's why I'm asking. So because the Baltic states are lacking clearly some crucial capabilities, and it could be also.
You are threading on a very thin ice now because. You will need to show me another country in Europe or worldwide who have actually depleted its own stocks by 30 to 40% in armor vehicle, tanks, artillery, tube artillery pieces, and so many other things. True, it was made years ago because this war is going for more than 3 years already, and we were the first to not to fight, but to help fighting. And literally, I mean, we have slashed the line units because we don't have the Arizona deserts, with used tanks standing in cocoons. We have donated equipment from battlefield, from main battle tanks from line units to Ukraine in their hundreds. So, excuse me, we may not be donating as we speak simply because we don't have anything left, beyond the red line, which is, the accepted level of readiness and, equipment. We have not yet really replaced filled the gaps that were created by donations to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So this whole discussion about Suwałki Gap, about Kaliningrad as an anti-access aerial denial space, and all these Baltic Sea-related security challenges. This is an old debate. Started long before the full-scale invasion by Russia and so on. But what is, at least from my perspective, is a little bit missing is these, you need to develop a strategy, a proper strategy. You have to have a proper threat analysis. Yeah, and for a threat analysis, you need analysis of intentions and then of capabilities. So two sides of this coin.
And readiness
and readiness, and that there are some supplemental things. But I remember visiting a conference with PISM in Warsaw, I think 3 months before the war started, the full-scale invasion. So it was at the fall of 2021. So the military buildup of Russia started already around Ukraine. And I remember Baltic and Polish colleagues said to me, no, it will happen here, Suwałki or Narva, or they go to Vilnius and so on. So this fixation of this territory and few German colleagues, myself also, so we, guys, it's all about Ukraine. Yeah, it will be happening there most probably. So, is it already a fetish with this Suwałki and all these thing? Let me put it this bluntly. Yeah,
you know, a little bit. I would agree with your description, but then again, the map tells you a lot, right? So. If there is this very stupid idea on the Russian or in the East to attack NATO, what would you choose as the weakest spot or as the most painful place, right? That you could exploit then, because in strategic terms you should probably attack the center of gravity, yes. For any alliance. This is why they went for Kiev, yes, so quickly. So I would guess that still this is one of the hotspots, and of course, I mean, I understand the underlying philosophy of your question, if I get it right. There is no direct imminent risk today, either from Kaliningrad Oblast or from the
Western military district,
bases, or from Belarus. But it is widely recognized that even despite Russia is so heavily involved in terms of land forces in Ukraine, it is actually expanding the armed forces. It is building new large formations, divisions and corps. Of course, we can discuss, about the quality of it, and it is probably much lower than it used to be. The aviation is still active, and in nasty way. I mean, last week the NATO air detachments in Malbork, northeast Poland, has intercepted 4, Russian plane formations, flying, very close, not breaching, of course, not trespassing the NATO borders, but we are still busy. What was, a few months ago, we were so obsessed of what is going on in the Baltic Sea until NATO has stepped in decisively and launched this Baltic Sentry operation. And it's interesting that we don't hear anything, since then, because of that presence. And I will return to my favorite topic of Belarus. I mean, Belarus has been, I don't really understand why is it so much under the radar of general purpose media that Russia has actually nuclearized another country in Europe by expanding, by granting them access or placing its own nuclear weapons in the territory of Belarus. We don't know if it's permanent.
Is it an analogy to the nuclear sharing in NATO? Something like this?
I don't really know. I'm not expert in you know what is happening between Lukashenko and Putin. I don't think Putin would share anything, but still, I mean, we are in just as much as we, because you used the term fetish or fixation or obsession. For many years, our obsession was with the Kaliningrad Oblast and the clear, militarization of this area, of the Iskander missiles placed. This is why all the red, circles on the maps. Of course, the war and the how we approach those threats have changed our thinking about it. And we're not so scared about Iskander missiles anymore. But if they are nuclear tipped, and if there is a saturation attack on, say, Warsaw, the center of gravity, then we have a problem, yes? And if they are so close as in Belarus, then we have a greater problem, because the times are so short. So I wish you were right that we are over obsessed and overreacting, but I guess it's better safe than sorry.
That's for sure. So let's turn to another issue, which is kind of connected to this topic of military self-reliance. Since Donald Trump's return to the office, and also since J.D. Vance's famous speech also in Munich, this year, so we've seen a renewed debate in Europe about strategic autonomy. Poland has traditionally been skeptical about this idea, but has anything shifted in recent months? Do you see signs of a more nuanced or pragmatic approach to the questions of Europe's independence and security matters, especially with a view to US behavior and not even burden sharing, but more burden dumping? So is there change visible in Warsaw?
All right. So it's this topic has many layers.
Of course.
First of all, we sort of were not fearing the return of Donald Trump as much as other countries in Europe, because we have made our homework at least in terms of defense spending, right? So we had that box ticked already before he came to power, and actually this is what the Polish diplomacy also was building upon. Yes, that look, guys, we may not be, especially with this, sort of liberal government in Poland, they not, get along that easily with Mr. Trump, but at least in military and in security terms, we were feeling very, at ease. It's an excellent coincidence that we're talking at May 9th, because not because of the Moscow parade, but because of the Nancy Treaty, right? So if you're looking for any evidence that Poland is changing its mind, it is that Poland and France will just in a few hours' time they will sign a strategic treaty, including a defense chapter or defense clause. We don't know the wording yet, but there's been a lot of discussion that Poland is seeking another umbrella, so to speak, right? And that France can provide one, and maybe it will. Of course, it will be vague. Of course, it will be very nuanced. We know the French way they talk about. But it's not only France. It's also this this Nordic-Baltic format that Bartek was eloquently speaking about. Poland is looking to reinvigorate also debates with Germany. I mean, with the arrival of Friedrich Merz, of course, this is it opens a new window of opportunity. And I guess Poland will, now they will look into exploiting it. There is a new debate with Great Britain, with which, I mean, we have a very traditional security relations. So it is not that Poland is totally subscribing to the idea of strategic autonomy back from 2017, Macron's speech, etc.
Yeah.
But Poland is certainly in the camp of those in Europe seriously taking the responsibility. It's not a burden, it's responsibility, right? And they are, they've been for years advocating for Europe to take, more of this burden, more of this load, to spend more, not only in terms of, just spending money, but creating capabilities and expanding the also the sort of strategic importance, because military might is one of the tools, on your disposal. So I would say yes, Poland is very active in this European sort of developments, but of course Poland will be one of the last, if not the last, who switches off the light over transatlantic security cooperation and the importance of the United States as a European power.
Thank you, Marek. I have one last question, and then I will open up the discussion for the audience. So last autumn, my office here at the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung in Vienna conducted a public opinion poll. We call it the Security Radar, and then one result stood out. So only 47% of respondents in Poland still supported Ukrainians' accession to NATO, membership in NATO. So would you say that this is a snapshot? Or does it signal a deeper trend, a trend maybe towards containment, perhaps a growing belief that the risk and costs of Ukraine's instability kind of outweigh the benefits of its integration? Yeah? So what do you think?
So I guess my colleagues, in the previous panel have touched on the trends of it, of which the NATO question is one of the elements, and sadly the political debate have gone so far in Poland in radicalism that even the defense minister or people from the ruling parties have actually questioned openly the prospect of Ukraine being a member of NATO, if it doesn't do this or that, or in historic dimensions, the Volhynia massacre, etc., or in economic terms, because clearly we have some different interest in economy. I guess we were so. It's very strange to say, but we were so happy that the issue was taken off the table by the Americans, so that we don't really need to have that discussion anymore. We can sort of refer to whatever was said or communicated from the Washington. Of course, the debate will return once, if there is any, ceasefire/peace agreement and whatever it will be between Ukraine and Russia, but I guess the focus will now be, and this is what we're hearing from Kiev as well. Yes, that the focus now will be on the European Union, on creating some kind of defense union between the EU and Ukraine, so that it can actually augment this European defense efforts, and may someday, if or when the U.S. administration changes their mind, be an argument towards opening the negotiations for accession.
Thank you very much. Mariana, do we have questions on Zoom or in the audience?
Well, thank you very much indeed. You pointed out rightly that the Baltic states may be the weak point in a part of Ukraine, and even if the war in Ukraine was going to stop, the Russian economy became a war economy, and it's not so easy to change back to civil economy. So therefore, there will be a constant build-up. Now, as Finland and Sweden joined NATO, there must be much closer cooperation now. And what about readiness of Finland to help the Baltic states? We have some troops from Germany coming, but that's not impressive so far. What is going to be built up? What about Finland and Poland as the immediate neighbors, and probably Sweden? Thank you.
Finland, of course, is very important member state because it has a weight, it has a gravity, it has size, it has this lengthy border, etc. But of course, it acts, it has effects both ways. I mean, Finland can have a large army, and they do, but it's a territorial army. I mean, the force is designed for territorial defense without really any expeditionary role, even to the extent of the three Baltic states. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen any statement from Helsinki in recent months declaring any kind of involvement, in the. I might be wrong, but I haven't seen any significant statement about that. Of course, they do have a sizable aviation. They have more than 60 combat aircraft, and they will be switching to fifth generation. So that's a problem for the Russians, of course, and that's a benefit for the Baltic states. They do expand their maritime capabilities. They are building, what you could call the frigate-size ships, pretty capable. And they are acquiring a lot of missiles. So that's in terms of them being the northern post for blocking the Russians for accessing the sea and their corridors above the Baltic Sea, we're fine. But I wouldn't expect any involvement pretty soon of Finland here. Sweden is much more active because Sweden has been participating in NATO, overseas operations for many years as a partner nation, and of course is very active in the EU operations. Swedish Air Force is actually in Poland as we speak for the first NATO mission under Allied umbrella, and they have actually made their first intercept of the Russian aircraft, from Poland last week, serving under a NATO umbrella. So that was a significant step. And of course, they have actually declared their mechanized battalion, I guess, to Latvia, which is arguably the most complex NATO enhanced for the presence, brigade group. But we are happy to see the Swedes, stepping in.
Be engaged. Thanks. Please. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's a very abstract question, but a few weeks ago, my colleague went to the Polish ambassador in Vienna and asked him if Poland now, at the moment, was ready to fight against Russia and protect its neighbors, and he answered with a simple yes. What do you think?
What is the scenario? I mean, if the Russians attack us or attack any of our allies, I guess this is. I mean, it's a no-brainer situation. I mean, we will be fighting in that way or the other. If it's about Ukraine, yes, and this this lengthy debate about sending troops or not, it's much more complicated questions because we actually, I think we adopted a strategy of letting the big powers play their role first, and we may consider being a supporting force. So far, I guess, from the initial statements from 2 or 3 months ago, I think the debate has sort of
cooled down.
Yeah, it cooled down, dropped to the very lower levels of engagement. So we'll see what happens. But I guess not only for the mentality, not only for history, but also for the for what we see ourselves as members of NATO. Yes, I mean the answer from the ambassador was correct.
Thank you. Here we have a question. Yeah.
Stefan Wospanik from the Austrian Press Agency. I've got two questions for you. Because you mentioned Belarus and that it is a nuclear state, do you think that reciprocity would be now necessary, meaning that you would also have to station nuclear warheads in Poland? And do you think that something like that is going on, maybe that France is lending you the nuclear weapons? And the second question, if Ukraine collapses, what will Poland do? Will it just stand by and look on, or would you step in and try to acquire territory there for security or defense purposes?
Let me start from the latter. What do you mean by Ukraine collapsing?
Well, that Russia is just that they take Kiev and try to install.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
With that? Okay. So I think this is such a distant scenario today that I would answer this way. This will, if what you're speaking about materializes, it will send such a shockwaves, not only through Poland, but through entire Europe and truly entire world, that we would find ourselves in a totally different world immediately, with decisions unheard of and unseen for decades. And we can only, we can spend the rest of the day discussing, what would happen if this happens. But, let's, move on. For the nuclear debate, very sexy, very, widely and hotly debated. There's maybe 5 people in Poland that can, speak about nuclear issues with the degree of knowledge. And by the way, they cannot speak. So, so that's the problem. I think we declared not once that we would be very happy to host, the nuclear sharing scheme being expanded, yes, reformed and moved to the east. This didn't happen either, with the previous administration, because it wasn't only the Biden one, and I don't see it happening under the Trump administration. Of course, there is this nuclear dimension with our, relations with France, and I would say they are more hopes than some kind of prospects. But again, we'll see what happens. They have we will see what will be the language of the treaty. If it's going to be similar to the doctrinal language that Polish security interests, that cover or that Polish security interests are included in French vital interests, then the word vital probably refers to the nuclear doctrine, and then we can actually figure out what could happen. The French don't have anything like nuclear sharing themselves. They don't do it. And despite they have a more sort of versatile capability than the Brits, for instance, yes? I don't think that whatever we sign with them will actually result in anything, being placed in Poland. We may see, maybe there is some kind of exercise that we will see as a tool of strategic communication to the Russians. And I hope that will happen. Just like, we have these annual NATO exercises in which Polish aircraft participate in a snowcat role in support of the nuclear missions.
So we have one, I think, last question, or Mirjana? Yes, last question from.
You've been talking about the NATO exercise in the coming weeks. I just wanted to ask you about the Zapad exercise planned by Russia in autumn. Do you think there is some preparation for that on Polish side, or how do you see that?
You know, large-scale exercises are not a matter of a few months of preparations. They are prepared over the course of 2 or 3 years. We knew that Zapad 25 was going to happen years before. And we also have our plans. And we have planned for years for a large-scale exercise, which is, I think it is going to be dubbed Iron Defender, because we have this new, large tactical unit called Iron Division, which is going to defend, which is placed eastwards from Warsaw and is going to defend the so-called Brest Gate. That is the area, Belarus has this lump towards Poland. So the closest distance from this lump to Warsaw is 150 kilometers or less than that. So we needed a strong, heavy division to defend the east of Poland. So this division will exercise, right after the Zapad, but this was planned even before the communication about Zapad was made public.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Marek. That was a rich and thoughtful, thought-provoking tour through a complex Polish security landscape. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thank you all.